welcome to the regular meeting for the Board of Supervisors, September 24th, 2019. Can you take the roll, please, Kylie?
Supervisor Howard?
Present.
Supervisor Hemmingson?
Here.
Supervisor Gitlin?
Yes.
Supervisor Berkowitz?
Here.
Chair Cowan?
Here. At this time, we're going to take a moment of silence or a moment of reflection. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Introductions of new employees. Do we have any new employees or introduction of new employees at this time? No one. Okay. County Council, anything to report out of closed session?
No reportable action.
Okay. Supervisor Berkowitz, you want to kick us off?
Well, thank you, Madam Chairman. Last week, Supervisor Hemmingson and I attended a special future facilities meeting where we heard a presentation by representatives of Aircon Energy. They presented a preliminary assessment of our county's infrastructure. By implementing their suggestions, they estimate that we could save an annual cost on energy of more than $50,000 a year each year for the next 17 years. Supervisor Cowan and I attended the annual Lincoln Reagan dinner, which was a sold-out event this year. I had meetings with Heather Snow and Heidi Kunstl where we discussed a possible solution for a portion of the homeless problem. Last Friday, I attended the monthly meeting of the Crescent City Del Norte County Chamber of Commerce, where we discussed possible new members and the planning for Sea Cruise. Mayor Inscore and I will be planning for a new event that will be presented at the annual dinner. Also had a meeting with David Jones, the president of the Klamath Chamber of Commerce, where we discussed how the chamber can be more effective in promoting the Klamath area. And that's my report, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Supervisor Howard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Attended the Natural Resources Goals Committee meeting with Supervisor Hemmingson, where we discussed potential outcomes for tax default properties at Pacific Shores and potentially passing a recommendation forward for the County Board of Supervisors to consider an action at a future meeting. Also spent some time with Caltrans and the Del Norte Local Transportation Commission, continuing to push on Highway 197, 199 litigation that still has us hung up there, and made a motion to intervene in the litigation, which I signed a letter on yesterday, which will be sent to the courts on behalf of the Del Norte Local Transportation Commission to have Del Norte Local Transportation Commission hopefully being added into that litigation. Had some discussions with the Community Development Department and a landowner at the Saxon's boat launch on some continuing issues with Department of Fish and Wildlife Maintenance at that boat launch and facility and supply of water. I also had a Del Norte Solid Waste meeting with Supervisor Cowan where we discussed extension of a contract for Recology, the Tansy Games, which were very successful this year in collecting quite a bit of tansy around Del Norte County. And then also met at a separate meeting of Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority to select a new commissioner for our commission, which is Michael Tompkins, which we have on our consent agenda for today. Spent a great deal of time with NBC Sports here filming for 4 days, various areas within our county, taking in the beauty, taking in the people, and more importantly, talking about our great relationship developing between Ricketts and Takata and Crescent City, Del Norte County, and how this film will be aired all over the world when it comes time for 2020 Olympics in July of next year. Spent some time with Amanda Hickson with the Food Council discussing outcomes. Also attended an emergency board meeting where we had a resolution to join the city of Boise, Idaho, in efforts to appeal to the Supreme Court on some rulings with the Ninth District Court on homeless issues. And then also attended in Weaverville, the North Coast Regional Unified Air Quality Management District meeting, where we had a great deal of discussion and moved forward with resolution to lower our fees to encourage landowners, especially large landowners, to do controlled burning over large acreages to help reduce fuel loads, especially in Del Norte, Trinity, and Humboldt counties. And lastly, I met with Steve Perez in Hyuchi, where his church would like to put in a park for children up there, which would be very necessary to help serve a bunch of folks. And we'll be having some future meetings on that to discuss where the county may or may not be able to play a role in helping to facilitate those type discussions to get a park up there for children to play. And that's the end of my report, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Supervisor. Supervisor Gitlin?
Yes, thank you. We addressed a good amount of constituent issues this past 2 weeks involving squabbles between neighbors, dog adoptions, and code violations. We also coordinated our monthly 101 freeway median cleanup. It occurs every 4 weeks, 4 to 5 weeks in that general area to keep the median free of debris on the 101 between the median between the freeways. Our board, as was mentioned, met in special session to allocate funds to join the city of Boise in the amicus brief, which will be a two-part. Number one, we'll see if the Supreme Court will take it. And number two, we'll have a voice in that decision to hopefully amend and clarify the Ninth District Court of Appeals decision, which is about 11 months old right now. And we'll have clarity. Hopefully we'll have some clarity there. This past Saturday, Take a Bite Out of Blight volunteers participated in the annual beach cleanup, which was sponsored by the Smith River Alliance. Our group worked in an area called the Wedge, as you recall. It's just south of Anchor Way, and we're understanding that 3 of the 4 bins have been brought in, and right now the count is 4.19 tons of trash and debris over this past year has been removed. We also discovered what appeared to be the surplus of stolen bikes and bike parks behind one of those areas. And we have notified the sheriff that here's where it is, so hopefully some of the 300 plus bikes that have been stolen this last 12 to 18 months in Del Norte County can be recovered. Finally, as many of you are aware, the county continues to pay rent on vacated premises on 2nd Street. The site was formerly the alcohol and other drugs office, but those offices were moved February 1st to the DHHS facilities on K Street. The vote to settle the lease agreement or abrogation agreement was deadlocked 2-2. So meanwhile, the $3,078 monthly payments continues to date, and we'll have another payment in October 1st. Right now it's about $24,500 to pay on this. So I'd like to learn a consensus of board members to consider and suspend all future payments and enter into negotiations with the landlord to settle the balance due on the residual amount of the lease, which is about 7.5 years running through to 2026. And I'd like this placed on the agenda for Tuesday, October 8th meeting. Thank you.
Supervisor Hemmingson?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Supervisor Cowan and I, along with a number of other people, had last chance grade stakeholders meeting. We continue to try to shorten that timeline. We continue to try to get some sort of a mitigation plan in place. We got a ways to go. But things are moving, at least we're moving forward. We're continuing to move forward and looking, like I said, looking to shorten that timeline. As was mentioned by Supervisor Howard, the NBC film crew was here. It was nice to meet them. They enjoyed their stay here and are planning on coming back, and that in itself, I think, is is exceptional. They seem to be pretty neat guys. They really loved the time that they were here, and we loved having them. I had a conference call, a Whale Gear Innovations Group call. I've had several complaints about a lot of low-level crime, burglaries. So I've had people contacting me, and we've been meeting with the sheriff and the chief probation officer, trying to look at a strategy on curtailing that or dampening that considerably. So we're looking at some things that may be brought back to the board, security patrols and things like that. So hopefully we get something in place that will work. I also attended the special board meeting. I had a call from a Haley Branson from the LA Times wanting to interview me, having to do with the past tsunamis. And I was here in the '64 tsunami, so we had a breakfast interview. I don't know what's going to come of it. It was pretty interesting. We met a group of us, Pacific Shores property owners, the Tolowa Nation, other stakeholders, along with Sean Freeze from Fish and Wildlife, met about the Pacific Shores property. We're trying to get the Pacific Shores property a little better suited for more recreational opportunities. The Fish and Wildlife is interested in acquiring the privately owned properties out there and taking it into that wildlife area. So we've been working on that. As Supervisor Howard said, we had some meetings on a possible way of helping with tax default properties. I went to Rockin' at Rowdy, which is put on by the Child Care Council. It was a really neat event. It was nice to see the Wonder Bus there. There was a couple of bounce houses, all kinds of activities for the kids, music, food. It was a great event, a great place, a great day. It was a perfect day for it, and it went off very well. I thought it was a neat thing. I know my grandkids enjoyed it immensely. We had, as Supervisor Berkowitz said, we had a future facilities meeting. We addressed staff parking, as well as the aircon presentation. I won't go into that. He covered that pretty well. I got a call from Senator McGuire, he just wanted to know how things were going in the county, and probably a bad question to ask, so I let him know. And that went on for a while, but we have a pretty good relationship, so I always enjoy talking to him. I went down to Green Diamond's celebration of getting their forest habitat conservation plan in place. They've been working on this for 10.5 years. And this is a forest habitat conservation plan for the northern spotted owl, Pacific fisher, and the red and Sonoma tree voles. It was a neat presentation. Of course, Doug Reed, the president of Green Diamond, and also his people that work for him, Neil Ewald, Jason Carlson, and Gary Renierson, were there. Also got to meet the president of Humboldt State, Dr. Tom Jackson, and from the Department of Fish and Wildlife, Tina Bartlett, and Paul Souza from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife were there, as well as Rex Bone from Humboldt County. But it was nice to get together with those people. That was quite a deal. I mean, working on something for 10.5 years. Now you know, you get a sense of what has to go through these environmental processes to get things done. The same type of thing that we're having to deal with on last chance grade, those types of things. It just takes a long time. I also drove by the Fort Dick Fire Department's new building. The slab was poured, the apron was poured. That appears to be moving along quite nicely. It'll be nice to see that when that gets done. And that's it for me.
Thank you, Supervisor. After our last BOS, or Board of Supervisors meeting, we had a Solid Waste Authority meeting, as Supervisor Howard pointed out. Also, attended the quarterly Last Chance Stakeholders Group meeting. Our meetings are held quarterly. They're an all-day workshop, and we go over all the studies and what's going on. And as Supervisor Hemmingson said, we're doing everything we can to up the date, to move things forward. And the discussions of possible mitigation options is really important. And was the topic last time, and it came up before. Communication is key so that we don't end up as the same situation with 199 and 197 and what's going on there. We don't want to get it all the way to the end and have to deal with litigation. So communication is really important, and it's a great group, and they're always very, very productive days. Long days, but productive days. Had a meeting with a constituent regarding homelessness and an idea he had around it. Had another meeting on homelessness with True North. Talk about the Rogue Retreat and their presentation and next steps. Met with Jan Wortman to go over the piece when the Japanese delegation comes in December. It's all around women empowerment, and we have different people working on that. And so we were trying to, met with her and Sue to go over what we're going to do down in Klamath that day. Attended the Lincoln Reagan dinner. It was a nice event. Was able to do something with my son that was pretty amazing. We went up to San Francisco and went to the top of the Golden Gate Bridge. And wow, that's all I can say. It was just truly a once-in-a-lifetime experience. And to do it with my son was even cooler. Had agenda review for this meeting. Had another solid waste meeting where we voted in Michael Tompkins, and congratulations to him. And it is on the agenda today. Unfortunately, he's at a medical appointment and will not be here, but he is very excited to join us. So that's great. Had a Visitors Bureau meeting. It's been a year since we announced we hired the company to come in and promote Del Norte County and work with us on to bringing in the next new visitor. Went over the second quarter reports to see where we were last year compared to there, and nice to see we're moving up and to have that base and to measure on making sure that what we're doing and what we're investing in is working. We had the special meeting, as everyone talked about, to weigh in on the amicus brief. Had another homeless meeting with the staff, Senator McGuire, and that group, and had that meeting. And then had another homeless meeting with Jay, Eric Weir, Mayor Inscore, the Barnes, and a few other constituents, and some ideas there. And wrapped up yesterday with a meeting with Randy Hooper out at the airport. Supervisor Hemmingson and I will be heading to DC next month, and so we're having communications around meetings with the DOT and our current airlines, Contour Air. So went over all that, and that was with it for me.
Madam Chairman?
I skipped over,
Sorry, I have a point of order.
sure.
Mr. Gitlin suggested a consensus for an item to be placed on the next agenda, and
The way we usually do it,
We
you'll
didn't-
just let me know, and we'll go through it at that point.
so you're asking that Mr. Gitlin's
Put it in an
request is
email,
going to
right?
be considered by you?
Yeah, absolutely. Everything he puts
Okay.
through in an email is.
That's all I wanted to know.
Yep. If it needs to be put on and we
Great.
have a report for it, it will be. That's how we do it.
Thank you.
At this time, I'm going to request any deletions, corrections, or additions from board members to this agenda. In order to add an item to the agenda, the matter must have come to the attention of the county subsequent to the posting of the agenda, and the matter requires action before the next regular meeting. Do we have any additions or deletions from this agenda? Seeing none, we're going to go into the consent agenda. We have items 1 through 18 on our consent agenda.
Move to approve, Madam Chair.
Second.
I have a motion and a second on our consent agenda. I will take public comment at this time on our consent agenda items only. Is there any public comment? Seeing none. Kylie?
Supervisor Hemmingson,
Yes, I need to recuse myself on item number 15. I have a conflict of interest.
Supervisor Gitlin,
Yes.
Supervisor Berkowitz?
Yes.
Supervisor Howard?
Yes.
Chair Cowan?
Yes. We had a couple of items. I believe you have one of them, Supervisor Howard.
Certainly do. This is a proclamation honoring Binational Health Week. Please bear with me, this is kind of lengthy. This measure would call on all people of Del Norte County to join the people of Latino origin in observing, participating in the 19th Annual Binational Health Week to take place October 1st through the 31st, 2019. Whereas the Secretariats of Health and of Foreign Affairs of Mexico, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Guatemala, Honduras, Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru, the Institute of Mexicans Abroad, the Mexican Social Security Institute, the United States-Mexico Border Health Commission, and the Health Initiative of the Americas, a program of the University of California at Berkeley School of Public Health, have recognized the necessity of improving access to health services for the underserved Latino population in the United States of America. And whereas according to the 2014 United States Census, this country is home to more than 55 million people of Latino origin. And whereas improving the health of mobile populations requires multiple approaches in service design, delivery, funding priorities, and most fundamentally requires strong binational commitment. And whereas in October 2001, 2002, 2003, 2004, 2005, 2006, 2007, 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017, and 2018, the Health Initiative of the Americas and partnering organizations convened the first 9 binational health weeks, an unprecedented effort overseen by a multi-agency task force, which conducted health promotions and education activities for the underserved Latino populations in the United States, and over 1 million people benefited from the healthcare activities. And whereas Binational Health reflects coordinated efforts between the United States, Mexico, Canada, Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru to improve the quality of life of underserved populations by expanding their access to health care, increasing their health insurance coverage, and reducing their unmet health needs. And whereas the Health Initiative of America and the Consular Network in the United States of Mexico, Guatemala, Honduras, Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru are coordinating the 9th Binational Health Week, and activities throughout the country will be centered in regions with high level of community needs. And whereas the Del Norte County acknowledges the many organizations and volunteers collaborating in the organization of health fairs and educational health workshops, and whereas the Binational Health Week provides an opportunity to highlight critical health issues in Del Norte County and throughout the United States and will serve as a basis for future bilateral efforts. And whereas Del Norte County is committed to recognizing and honoring those observations that are dedicated to the best ideals of public service, and Binational Health Week is one of those such worthy observations. Now therefore be it proclaimed by the Del Norte County Board of Supervisors that in honor of those efforts to improve public health, October 1st through the 31st, 2019, be declared the 19th Annual Binational Health Week throughout Del Norte County, passed and adopted this day, the 24th of September, 2019, signed by our Board Chair, Supervisor Cowan. Do I have somebody here to receive this?
Thank you, Supervisor Howard. Did you want to say a few words?
Thank you. The Binational Health Week is the largest mobilization to provide health coverage and health services, education to the Latino population of the world. So I thank you for supporting us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we have a resolution. Supervisor Hemmingson.
Yes, thank you. This is a resolution of the Board of Supervisors of the County of Del Norte, State of California, honoring Supervisor Jack B. Reese. Whereas Jack B. Reese began his career with Del Norte County when he was hired in 1978 as a sheriff sergeant, and whereas Jack served with the Del Norte County Sheriff's Office until retirement in 1990, and whereas in 1993 Jack was elected as Supervisor District 1 and was re-elected in 1997, and whereas Jack served as the chair of the Board of Supervisors in 2000 and again in 2004. Whereas Prior to his career with Del Norte County, Jack also served his country as a soldier in the United States Army, and Jack continued his service while employed with Del Norte County as a member of the United States Army Reserves. And whereas Jack was well known for his direct approach to addressing issues, constituents, and lawmakers, now therefore be it resolved that the Del Norte County Board of Supervisors hereby acknowledges the dedication of Jack B. Reese during his years of service to Del Norte County and his positive influence within his community, passed and adopted by the Board of Supervisors of the County of Del Norte, State of California, this 24th day of September 2019, and he will be sorely missed.
This was well written, especially about his approach of. It was very black and white, and he did care. He really did care. And when he was elected, I was a teenager, and when he retired, I was in my 30s. So he put, as a supervisor, so he put a lot of years in, and I saw a lot of compassion from him because I'd be over at the house and I'd answer the phone, and members of the community would call and they would just talk and talk and talk, and he would sit there and just listen and listen, and he took everybody's thoughts and cared about it, and so he based his decisions on that. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay. At this time, we're going to take public comment. Members of the public may address the board on matters which are within the jurisdiction of the board. If you are addressing the board regarding a matter listed on the agenda, you may be asked to wait and hold your comments until that item comes up. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes or less. Any public comment at this time? Wow, quiet up. Come on up.
My name is Hugh Soland. My comment was, we listened to the county council tell us last week that there was no indoor commercial gardens. And when I had talked to Dominic Mello, I brought him out to the house to ask about a permit that had been okayed for a man running a huge marijuana garden out of his garage. Dominic didn't bring that up, didn't even mention that. At that point in time, it was, well, your board of supervisors were still trying to weigh things out, and there was supposedly a moratorium. So we talked to Apperson's crew, and basically we listened to Apperson talk the other day, and he says, go to the building department. The building department, there was a third department, and back to Apperson. Why can't all three departments work together when normally you have illegal grows, you have people that are collecting welfare, collecting HUD, all your other little benefits. You can do background checks and figure out who's in them. The lady behind me, she has been talking to you guys for months about the one up on Church Tree. I'm talking about one on Olive. When I talked to one of the real higher, more statured deputies out here that was your guard for here for the day, he told me, well, certain neighborhoods should expect it. I'm like, no. Nobody should expect to have an illegal marijuana garden next to them. And when they do, we should get some help from the sheriff and from the other two agencies. All three agencies should be working together. Tossing in the medical marijuana and saying it's medical is like me getting pulled over drunker than shit tonight and saying, hey, I'm a diabetic, and the cop goes, oh, okay, I'm gone. No, come on. You can check out if it's medical. The grow that I'm talking about is worth about $100,000 a year, paying no taxes. We had both dispensaries here in town talk to us last week. Not one of them spoke about the illegal grows. All they wanted was variances, lower taxes. The illegal grows at $100,000 worth of weed going out there. First of all, it's going to our kids. Second of all, it's undermining them. They'll be paying our taxes for the county. I don't see the hemp working because it's always the same thing. Transportation costs of getting logs from here to Medford costs too much. Everything like that, the transportation costs drive it down. You guys are putting a lot of bank into hemp and into weed. The weed that's, being out there produced needs to be taxed. It needs to be regulated. I've been working on mine for the better part of 2 years. Me and my family moved out of town after numerous threats from the grower. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your comments. Any other public comment at this time? Okay, seeing none. We're going to go into general government. We're going to adjourn as the Board of Supervisors and reconvene as the Board of Equalization and approve and authorize the chair to sign the stipulation agreement with TMT Research Development on APN number 103-080-048 as requested by the assessor. Good morning.
Good morning. How are we doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. I'm
Great.
Brantley Cobb, the assistant assessor. We're stipulating for the 2017 roll year for TMT research. If you guys have any questions, let me know.
Gentlemen, did you all have a chance to review the claim and then the assessor's assessment on that? And do we have any questions?
Brady?
Brantley.
Brantley, I'm
Yep.
sorry. Brantley, just kind of go over the numbers here, your opinion of value of the land of this particular property is $260,000. The claimant, or the individual who's protesting, says their value of this $135,000.
Yeah, so...
Okay. Let me just finish this
Sorry.
other question, because it involves improvements also. You've corrected your assessed valuation of improvements to $870, and the claimant has said, well, it's only $730. So can you give us the sales comps? I know there's limited activity, and it goes back to 2015, to justify your upping the land cost on the commercial property to $260, and then amending, you had a higher amount, then you amended it down on the improvements to $870, which I think is totaled a little over $1.2 million. And what's the difference between what the TMT people are requesting and what you are stipulating to?
So the land costs came from comparables. Obviously, like you said, there's not very much out in the Smith River area, especially that size and that use. There was a few parcels, one neighboring parcel. There was a couple other down the road. I can't get into exact sale price information on which parcels, but there was the one across the road there. That's now the Dollar General was one that we used. We used, I believe we used our valuation from the purchase of the old Rays down there as well. So along with a couple other, that was for the land. With the improvements, it was a little bit easier to go about that because there is no comparables with those kind of improvements that TMT does there. So we went through a Marshall and Swift cost guide approach. So we costed it out and came up with a valuation there. So it's kind of a mix of comparables and a cost approach.
Brantley, is anyone from the claimant here to dispute these?
During stipulation, it's only the assessors.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. All right, well, I'm looking at the figures. There's not exactly a lot to compare it to, so
Yeah.
I'm looking at your numbers, and I'm going to consider those as valid numbers, and I'll make that motion to stipulate as to the corrected assessed value of the property at this time.
Do you have a motion? Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any public comment on item number 20? Thank you.
And if you would include in that motion to also waive the appearance of the applicant.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Okay, I see no public comment. Any other questions from the board members? Kylie?
Supervisor Howard?
Yes.
Supervisor Hemmingson?
Yes.
Supervisor Berkowitz?
Yes.
Supervisor Gitlin?
Yes.
Chair Cowan?
Yes. Item 21, we're going to adjourn as the Board of Equalization and reconvene as the Board of Supervisors. And 1, approve an ordinance repealing Chapter 12, Title 5 of the Del Norte County Code relating the regulation of ambulance services. And number 2, designate county council to prepare a summary of the ordinance for publication. Good morning, Joel.
Morning, Board. This is the ordinance we discussed last time. It just repeals. It's really simple. It gets the county out of the way and lets the North Coast EMS do its regulating. If there's any questions, I can take those. Otherwise,
Any questions? I'm going to open it up for public comment. Item 21, is there any public comment regarding item 21 at this time? Seeing none?
Move to approve, Madam Chair.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. No public comment. Kylie?
Supervisor Gitlin?
Yes.
Supervisor Berkowitz?
Yes.
Supervisor Hemmingson?
Yes.
Supervisor Howard?
Yes.
Chair Cowan?
Yes. Moving on to item 22, this is to approve and authorize an annual step increase to a range A1, step H for county council as requested by county administrative office.
Move to approve.
Second.
A motion and a second. I'll take any public comment on item 22 at this time. Seeing none. Kylie?
Supervisor Berkowitz?
Yes.
Supervisor Gitlin?
Yes.
Supervisor Howard?
Yes.
Supervisor Hemmingson?
Yes.
Chair Cowan?
Yes. Moving on to item 23, budget transfer, approve and adopt budget transfer 06-51 in the amount of $41,000 in the public defender's budget in order to cover accounts payable currently outstanding for fiscal year 18-19.
Move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any public comment on item 23? Seeing none. Kylie?
Supervisor Gitlin?
Yes.
Supervisor Berkowitz?
Yes.
Supervisor Howard?
Yes.
Supervisor Hemmingson?
Yes.
Chair Cowan?
Yes. Okay, moving on to item 24. 1, conclude the public hearing and adopt the 2019-2020 fiscal year recommended budget as a final determined and all special district budgets by the resolution as presented over the course of the budget hearing. 2, approve and adopt resolution 2019-035, a resolution fixing tax rates for the fiscal year as required by government code. 3, approve and adopt resolution 2019-036, setting appropriations limits for the fiscal year. 4, approve the annual children's budget as presented. 5, approve the use of the Stimson Fund for the internal lease of 1 vehicle for the district attorney pending review and recommendation by the Proactive Financial Goal Committee. And 6, approve the position changes as outlined in attachment A as requested by the CAO.
So this is the final step in the budget process for this upcoming fiscal year. The board had directed one change at the last meeting when the public hearing was opened. That change was made by the auditor. There have been a couple of reconciliations that are reflected in the final numbers, but none of the budget lines have changed. So what's before you today is what was presented at the opening of the public hearing. And the recommendations are those read by the chair, 1 through 6.
Right. Any public comment at this time on item 24? Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, just briefly, I've been discussing with CAO the possibility of looking into lease options for future purchases with Enterprise Rent-A-Car, one of the groups that we work with out of CSAC, and noticing the purchase for the DA's office. I was going to ask CAO if there's, how quick in the budgetary process would that purchase occur once the board approved or adopted the budget?
Well, we still have to take it back to the committee for the final recommendation, and that generally will happen. I believe the meeting is set for maybe next week, And then the process of purchasing the vehicle is really up to the department at that point, once it's approved. So we've had vehicles with, the department has basically delayed it for several months, or they've jumped on it right away and made the purchase.
Okay. How would that work if the board were at some time here in the near future consider a potential leasing agreement with Enterprise for our fleets? How would that work in a case like this where a department has obviously initiative to go out and buy a vehicle once approved in the budget?
Well, once it's approved by the board, they have the spending authority to be able to do that. If they go right away, then that vehicle would be purchased under the existing approval by the board. It's one vehicle at this point. We have the other vehicles that are in the middle of the process for the sheriff's office and one for the assessor that are still being
Right.
paid. But it would be one vehicle. So, you know, if we're looking at an entire fleet and what they might be able to present, this one would probably fall under the purview of what the DA wants to do as quickly as they want to do it. So once
Okay.
the spending authority is given, the board has said, go ahead and go forward. I'm going to say you're probably looking minimum is 60 to 90 days on any kind of purchase anyway.
Okay.
To go through the committee and then go out and get the estimates of like vehicles from at least 3 different makes and models, those types of things.
Sure. Yeah, I'm just looking for ways to save on expenses, and with a lot of our counties around us taking advantage of these type of programs, it just seems reasonable for us to consider that at a certain time. And since we are talking with Enterprise right now on getting some bids put together for the board to maybe take consideration on in one of our future agendas, I didn't know how that might play into the mix, so that was my question. But if it's going to hold some things up, I'd like it, whether we go for it or not, the DA is going to need this in her budget, so maybe she could just drag her feet a little until we've got something reasonable back from Enterprise, but we'll see. Maybe I'll talk to her about that. With that, Madam Chair, I'd make that motion to adopt the budget.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second, and I haven't seen no public comment. Kylie?
Supervisor Berkowitz?
Yes.
Supervisor Gitlin?
Yes.
Supervisor Hemmingson?
Yes.
Supervisor Howard?
Yes.
Chair Cowan?
Yes. Moving on to our last and final item, 25, approve and adopt a resolution authorizing application for and receipt of Senate Bill SB 2, Planning Grants Program Funds, as requested by Director of CDD. Good morning, Heidi.
Good morning. We have been given the opportunity to apply for this planning grant. Del Norte County has been allocated $160,000 in grant funds in order to help us identify ways to accelerate housing production in our community. And this aligns with our upcoming update of our county housing element, which one of the major elements of that is creating a housing sites inventory. And so this is an excellent use of these funds in order to hopefully hire a consultant to come in and evaluate our private land inventory to determine what sites may or may not be appropriate for allocating different housing locations. Also, the funds will be looked at to identify potential changes in our zoning ordinances and our land use, in our housing element also that would encourage additional development, hopefully at all income levels.
Right.
Move for approval.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any public comment on item 25? Seeing none, Kylie?
Supervisor Gitlin?
Yes.
Supervisor Berkowitz?
Yes.
Supervisor Howard?
Yes.
Supervisor Hemmingson?
Yes.
Chair Cowan?
Yes. And that is it for our meeting. We'll see everybody on October 8th. Thank you.